Welcome to the Word. We are in Exodus chapter 2 this morning. Let's get to the text. Now a man from the house of Levi went and took as his wife a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she took for him a basket made of bulrushes, and daubed it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds by the river bank. And his sister stood at a distance to know what would be done to him. Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, while her young women walked beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her servant woman, and she took it. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the child went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, for I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. When the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, because, she said, "I drew him out of the water." One day, when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When he went out the next day, behold, 2 Hebrews were struggling together, and he said to the man in the wrong, "Why do you strike your companion?" He answered, "Who made you prince and judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "Surely the thing is known." When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. The shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and saved them, and watered their flock. When they came home to their father Reuel, he said, "How is it that you have come home so soon today?" They said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and even drew water for us and watered the flock." He said to his daughters, "Then where is he? Why have you left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread." And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah. She gave birth to a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, "I have been a sojourner in a foreign land." During those many days the king of Egypt died, and the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery, and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God, and God heard their groaning. And God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God saw the people of Israel, and God knew. The grass withers and the flowers fade, but the word of the Lord stands forever. Thanks be to God. Let's just go through this line by line. So Moses is a Levite. He's a son of a Levite family. And this is during the time when the children were first being instructed to be killed by the midwives, and now they're just being killed on Pharaoh's command. And a woman, she conceives. She conceives and she bears a son, and when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him 3 months. Now this word fine is just tov, good. Now this is not saying, if she'd had 5 kids and 4 of them weren't good and 1 of them was good, she's going to keep the good one. That would be just a misreading of this. She sees the goodness of the child. And this is not necessarily moral goodness by any means. This is seeing she loves her child. That her child is a gift from the Lord. And she, as opposed to obeying Pharaoh who could kill her, she fears the Lord. She loves her child, and she hides him for 3 months. But babies grow and they get harder and harder to hide from evil tyrants. So it says, when she could hide him no longer, she took for him a basket made of bulrushes and daubed it with bitumen and pitch, and she put the child in it and placed it among the reeds by the river bank. Now, this word basket, just a quick word study here. Here is every usage of this word basket. And if you notice, the overwhelming majority of the time it is translated ark. Here it is translated basket. It's translated basket because it's talking about the material. It's made of bulrushes and daubed with bitumen and pitch. But there are other words for basket. Just because it is made in a similar way that baskets are made does not mean that Moses himself, the author of this book, sees the thing he was put into to go into the water to save him from the evil Egyptians, the murderous Egyptians, saw that as simply a basket. He uses the same word, which the only other times this word is used is ark. If you see every time that this word is used in Hebrew, Genesis 6, Genesis 6, Genesis 7, Genesis 8, this is the Noah account. This is the Noah account. And no other times does this word get used in the Hebrew Bible, in the Old Testament Hebrew. So I think we are right not to just think of this as a basket, but think ark. Think Noah's ark. Think the item that saves a child from disaster by floating him in the water. That Moses is tying these two ideas together. And so when you think of the salvation of Moses from judgment, think he goes into the water and he is saved by being on an ark. So it says she puts the child in it and she places it among the reeds by the river bank. If you've ever seen the Nile River, or many rivers have lots and lots of reeds along the bank, you don't just walk down and there's immediately rushing water. There's shallow water with reeds. And what she is doing is she is hiding the child and floating him in the water. But this is not the image, if you've seen the movie The Prince of Egypt, where the basket gets floated out into the middle of the Nile and is tossed around and alligators snap at it and boats go by. And no, she is not just letting go and letting God. She is continuing to hide her son, but she can no longer hide him in the house. She's going to hide him down by the river. And she not only puts him in this ark, but she places Yocheved, Moses' mother, places his sister, Moses' sister, Miriam, to watch over. She stood at a distance to know what would be done to him. Now, the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river. I think we can absolutely see this as the providence of God. God brings Pharaoh's daughter down to the river. While her young women walk alongside her, she has a cohort as royalty. She sees the basket among the reeds, and she sends someone. What is that? Go get that. Go get me that. And the word here is ark. It's not basket. So the Egyptian woman opens it, and she sees the child. And behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." And I just want to point out here how many women now in the story of Exodus. Moses is prophet par excellence in the Old Testament. Moses is the hand through which God redeems his people par excellence in the Old Testament. And how is it that Moses even exists? First, Shiphrah and Puah. Second, Yocheved, his mother. Third, Miriam. Fourth, Pharaoh's own daughter. And then later we're going to get into fifth, Zipporah, his wife, saves his life. The very redeemer of God's people in the Old Testament. Redeemers from oppression and slavery, the one that God uses to redeem his people, has been protected, saved, nurtured by women. That the Bible is not a sexist book. That this book is elevating women. And in Hebrew literature, this is elevating women to the nth degree. Moses is the lawgiver and redeemer par excellence. And he only exists because women step in to protect, to nurture, to defy the government, to take pity. Pharaoh's daughter here, she's an Egyptian, but she has pity where her father's heart is hard. And she says, this is one of the Hebrews' children. She took pity on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. Then his sister, we know later that this is Miriam, comes up and speaks to Pharaoh's daughter. What confidence here. She comes up to Pharaoh's daughter and says, shall I go and call you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you? And Pharaoh's daughter says to her, go. So the girl went and called the child's mother, Yocheved. This is Moses' mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child away. That Yocheved actually gets to enjoy a few more years, probably 4 or 5, before this child is weaned. That Moses is going to have very distinct memories of being raised as a Hebrew before he is trained in Pharaoh's court. This is important that we understand as things that the New Testament will say about Moses. And she not only has now defied Pharaoh, protected her child, but God in his providence has, can you imagine the anguish that Yocheved must be going through? Her child that she is trying to protect is down by the river. Her daughter is watching it, and Pharaoh's daughter comes and finds out. And your young daughter kind of runs to you and says, hey, Mom, Pharaoh's daughter found Moses, found your son, and is going to pay you to nurse him and to raise him in your own home. What beautiful providence of God. And says, so the woman took the child and nursed him. When the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became to her a son. She named him Moses, because she said, I drew him out of the water. This episode's getting a bit long, so we're going to have a part 2 of Exodus chapter 2. Welcome to the Word. Thank you for joining us. Grace and peace.